like to say hello and outline the purpose of what will be conducted within the next 20, 30 minutes, depending on how well this goes. A lot of people are not familiar with politicians of historical value or contemporary value, people that are in positions of leadership, even if they act in a very non leader way. And one of the efforts that I've tried to instill is to make the case for why the person is worth knowing about, and also what exactly can be done to combat them being in office. Misael Dirk into envoy. So for the last 11 years, the Senate Republican leader has been Mitch McConnell, the senior Kentucky senator, actually the longest serving senator from Kentucky. And his career has been one of doing 360s. This was a guy who went from being in favor of campaign reform, so not being corrupt, to saying that the McCain-Feingold reform bill was the worst, was unfair, whatever. That it was against the constitutional right of people to express themselves, even though, as we've proven before, when the more you allow money from corporations and special interest groups to get involved with legislators, the higher the rate is of them being corrupt. But we've been over this a million times. And I use that as an example to say, whereas I've had problems with McCain, that was one of the few things I could point to in his record and go, okay, that was great. That was something to actually be remembered for. So that's just to give you an idea of how how much of a leader he is. But the other part to take into account, because remember, when you have a lot of these presidential elections, the person who's most known oftentimes wins, and it's caused a lot of people to say these are popularity contests. Well, McConnell in 2016 had a 49% disapproval rating and has actually been found consistently to have the lowest home state approval rating of any senator. So this is a very unpopular politician. And yet, when he ran for his latest term, his sixth term in the Senate, he was able to get, I believe it was 16% of a higher percentage of the votes than the Democratic candidate. And you ask yourself, if they can't beat somebody that's that unpopular year after year after year, what chance do they have of beating Trump or of really going against anyone who's not favored by their constituents? I mean, you have to, like, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Here's a guy who's against Medicare for all, when 57% of his own party is in favor of it. This is the kind of backwards nonsense that I've tried to speak about. That we literally live in the twilight zone where politicians can get away with having positions that are completely reverse to what a majority of the country wants, but by virtue of them having the most donors to bend them over and say you're going to vote this way, they get to stay in power. And so few people know about this because the media has also been paid to keep quiet about stories such as this. That's why when we had the conflict with that congressman, I think his name was Duncan. I kept saying, all the people who are upset with him, especially those that are in Congress, really ought to take a look at themselves. It's a whole game of corruption, and he just became slightly more corrupt for what he was doing, but it's not new. And if he didn't tick off the wrong people, I'm about 99% sure he would have been able to keep his little game going. So McConnell is a very creepy figure. A lot of, and we go back to the whole public perception thing. The most anybody knows of him is due to the Daily Show, where he used to get mocked for his perceived resemblance of a turtle or whatever. Which, I'm not in the business of trying to attack these people for how they look. I don't care. I'm just bothered by the fact that we can have a Senate Majority Leader, a position that requires popularity amongst colleagues and presumably with the voters, and you're literally one of the most unpopular senators in the entire country. And it's the same thing with the Democrats with Pelosi, but that's another story. What Let me see what Envoy say. Interesting topic. I just want to bring it to your attention because a lot of people don't think about this. Harco says, yet at the same time, there are politicians that just take taxpayer money and put in their pockets or use that money to buy or to drop bombs on other countries for oil and other resources. Exactly. When I mentioned how we support the Saudis and Obama bombing Syria so much that he ran out of bombs, it's that kind of thing. Saudis destroyed Yemen, and the U.S. was right there holding their hands. Dirk says Duncan Hunter is like a lot of the politicians when it comes to money coming into their face. Yeah, well, Dirk, what his thing is bad. What I'm trying to get people to understand is that the media won't make note of the fact that these politicians, um, for the most part, except for I think 10 members of Congress, literally are doing the exact same thing, where they're paid out to vote a certain way, whereas he was just buying his stuff with his funds. But it's the same kind of game, just being played at a slightly less directly corrupt manner. So as opposed to, oh, I'm going to vote this way because this person gave me this money, I'm going to go and buy some nonsense, and it'll be to my personal gain, that kind of thing. Envoy says corruption. Really, I'm planning to watch Stephen Crosby states Trump is not a fascist. I know people bring up Obama in that video, so it'll be interesting to watch. Um, yeah, I've tried to explain. I don't have an agenda with either party, and I've criticized Obama a couple of times, but one of the things that was correct was the obstruction. I mean, he had numbers that were unprecedented, and it's really, when you think about the fact that was only 2 3 years ago, his tenure, and then you see all these Republicans who charge the Democrats with being obstructionist and, oh, how dare they vote against Trump's cabinet nominees and the Supreme Court nominees. They literally did the exact same thing to Obama. Um, and so I have no problem with the Democrats voting against whoever, especially when a lot of these people don't even have experience. Look at the education secretary, for example. Or they're flat out corrupt, like Mnuchin, who gave the junior California senator money not to her campaign, and she decided not to prosecute him even after having her own staff members say, yeah, there's cause for concern here. So it's all part of a sick game. I think I told you before, it's a corporate gangbang, and you ain't in it. And McConnell's been right at the center of it. The only reason him and Schumer get to take these positions of leadership is because they pay out their colleagues to vote for them and say, "Oh, okay, I'll put you, in the hot seat, the top spot." I mean, you are literally being elected by virtue of bribing someone into voting for you. It's the weirdest thing that this his story is significant for the two reasons I mentioned, that he is the Senate Majority Leader, and also the fact that we're literally talking about someone who is so unpopular in his own state and yet is able to stay in power because the Democrats are too stupid to run a person who actually has a platform that's opposed to his. Politics will always have the odor of fish around it. Yeah. Um, but these are fish that are not being talked about. And what's even creepier is that you have to remember a lot of people point to Trump's low approval ratings and go, "Oh, he'll never get reelected." Ha 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 ha. I said, man, look at what happened with McConnell. I can read you polls that we still have archived from that time that showed he was getting demolished, and then we ended up getting what we got. So it's just creepy that they can't figure out that you can't just expect vote for me because I'm not the person that you're so against, even though my positions are similar. And I think if the Democrats run one of their little establishment tools, this will be his McConnell's last election, which was in 2014, will be the one I go back to and go, yeah, this was the early model of why that didn't work. It's absolutely insane. See what else writing something. Is that it? Well, for me, so I continue to make more money. Yeah, he's enriched himself. Again, like I keep trying to tell you this point that both the both in the leadership of both parties in both chambers is the direct result of the whoever that person is paying out their colleagues to keep them as the spokesman for their particular branch of government. You know, Pelosi's been in Congress for 31 years, but can you name anything she's done that was impressive that you said, wow, oh, good job, great? I mean, if it's passing Obamacare, we can already talk about how the Republicans, or rather the Heritage Foundation, started that policy back in the 90s, and the Democrats just kind of became more right wing and then said, oh, I guess we'll steal that and name it after ourselves. Ha 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 ha. Need to have that Drain the Swamp Act explained on multiple news networks. Yeah, Dirk, it's but what's creepy, I keep using this word, what's disturbing is that you literally have open bribery that people can look up and that people will have no idea that it's even going on. I bet most people that voted for McConnell in that last election didn't know about him voting for, you know, whatever thing that negatively impacts them, whether it's some $1 billion military spending increase. They have no clue because we have members of Congress who more often than not do not get put on TV, and their votes for the most part are not seen as something of a big deal. You know, if you go on Senate.gov, they have all of the members of the Senate and how they voted on each new piece of legislation. How much of the state of California, out of just on a percentage points, do you think are actually going on that website and checking out what Harris has voted for, what Feinstein has voted for? Just every single vote. How many of them do you think are doing that? I'm not even doing that. So it can't be too many. Envoy says, looking at the country objectively since it was founded, which part do you think did more to benefit the country, Democrats or Republicans, since George Washington? Um, you know, a lot of the civil rights legislation I have a soft spot for, but that's really hard for me to answer it because I can think of both sides screwing over the U.S. and that's been a constant for the last 20 plus years. I'm gonna maybe say Democrats just because of the New Deal, but even then, that's still you have to factor in all the horrible things that they've done since then. Man, if FDR could come back and see how his party has turned into the bank party, just like the Republicans, he would be rolling in his wheelchair. I'm telling you, it is insane. What's even creepier is that when I try to do a lot of these streams, one of the aims or goals is to show you something about that person you might not have known about because it's not talked about, um, and say, hey, look, you know, this is a way that of why they're problematic, and no one takes it seriously. Okay, Envoy says Rosen was a shining beacon in helping the country out of depression, especially how it affected industrial America. Exactly. Um, I don't know if it was McConnell that said this, but I know it was one of the Republicans that said the Democrats have no ideas when they were during the that when they were trying to get that Republican health care bill passed last year. And I was watching TYT, and one of the commentators said they had an idea. It was called Obamacare, and they don't want you to get rid of it. Why would they vote with you to get rid of their own policy? I mean, I swear, if you watch McConnell's speeches from the last year and a half, and then you go and look back at his record during Obama's tenure, it's like two different people because he literally sits here and says the Democrats are obstructionist, which they are, but you were that for 8 years. And none of these news outlets call him out. None of the senators call him. None of it. It's the weirdest thing. I mean, I don't know if you heard about the nominees that Schumer and the rest of the Democrats help McConnell push through, but it's that kind of thing that you would never see the Republicans be involved with? The envoy asks, is there regarding the Constitution that you don't agree with? What do you mean? Is there is Are you saying that there's is there I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Is there something in the Constitution I don't agree with? And maybe that's what you're trying to convey. I can think of things in the Constitution that the current laws don't agree with. I brought up the Patriot Act. That's literally saying screw you to the Fourth Amendment. Um, I don't think so. I know that the Second Amendment. My problem with it for the last couple of years has been the fact that people will bring it up and go, "Oh, I have the right to bear arms." Ah, ha, ha, ha. Like, wait a second. Let me see if this is working. Getting called during the streams. What a wonderful thing. But with the Second Amendment, we're talking about a measure that was put in place before the school shootings, before people could go and get mad because they lost a video game and just blow somebody's brains out. Um, I think it's outdated, and I think that if people seriously sat back and said, what exactly, how does this benefit us now with all these new weapons that we're using and people are able to get their hands onto, a lot of people wouldn't be in favor of it. And it really sucks because I agree with the idea that if you change the laws, well, not even amended, but just I want people to stop going to it as the reason that they can have any kind of weapon, bazooka, AR-15, whatever. It's just the most extreme rifles out there. Like for example, with the that thing that happened this past Sunday, I don't think a law could have changed up. I believe if they had more security, um, it could have been stopped. Let me say hello to Music Fiend. Always late, yeah. It's difficult doing so. People will literally riot since it's there to fight back against tyrannical government. Well, here's the thing, Envoy. The tyrannical government's been around for years. The tyrannical government put millions of people out of their homes during the housing mortgage crisis. No one pulled up any weapons during that. The tyrannical government is trying to take away health care from people under the admittedly flawed Obamacare. And again, no one is using their weapons about that. No one's, taking out protest signs going, oh, don't repeal my health care. So I'm just saying, I think the case for the government being tyrannical is already here. I can name you multiple things that the US government gets away with that no one is calling out. Nobody is attacking. Yes, state surveillance. I mean, literally think about this. We need our weapons to fight against the tyrannical government. Well, why aren't you, I don't know, holding up protest signs over your Fourth Amendment rights being revoked? They've been revoked now for, uh, 17 years? I have to go look up the day the Patriot Act was signed, but you get my point. No, just no one thinks about that. No one says, wait a second, we've already lost some rights. It's civil war. If something like that happens on mass scale with like their guns to revolt and fight back. Well, I'm thinking if it's a civil war, it's going to be, you know, Americans fighting like just, North versus South, West versus East, that kind of thing. We actually lost the fourth. Yeah, Music Fiend. I'm sure you're familiar with the Patriot Act. That was designed so that they could get around, um, having to get a warrant for searches and seizures. The government has a copy of every single email and text you send out. I mean, there are so many laws that have just been repealed, like Obama repealing habeas corpus. They can put you in jail just without trial or prosecution. Again, no one talks about this. Thank you for looking that up, on Dirk, rather. I just know there's two blue non-avatar having users. That's how I get everybody mixed up now. Funny how the South has always been the least progressive part of America. Well, even if that's true, Envoy, the thing you have to understand is that Southerners fall for the same okey dokes as Northerners. Like, for example, most Republicans, as I mentioned before, want single payer health care or want Medicare for all. But they're not going, if they get a Democrat, which is very rare because the Democrats are to the right now, that actually wins a general election, has to go against a Republican that is against that. The Democrat isn't going to, is, even if he campaigns on it, the Republican will go, he's trying to take away our guns. That liberal's trying to turn us into Venezuela, as if half the people over there even know what is going on in that country. So they, I mean, look at what's going on in Texas, for example, with Cruz. He is a guy who is Harvard, went to Ivy League schools. Bottom line is not your typical Southerner, um, which is not a bad thing, but he's out of touch. I mean, it's never been more clear. But what he'll do is he'll put on a jacket and have some cowboy boots on, the rifle, a little stupid hat, and go, "Yeah, man, I'm sick and tired of tyrannical God," and get people to think he's one of them. No offense to Southerners, they're so easily swayed. No, no, Envoy. I think that the Northerners are easily swayed too. If you get up there and start talking about all the social issues that you are in favor of, that are considered liberal, they won't ask you about your economic policies, or if you think the bank should be prosecuted, or if you think there should be single payer instead of Obamacare. Just none of it. As long as you hit those few couple boxes. I know a person who literally is only likes Trump because they think something different is being done about immigration. That is their only reason. So people are falling for everything now. Music Fiend says dudes don't even know the capital of Venezuela, let alone the standard of living. Envoy says just start talking that good country language. That's what McConnell does too. This is a rich man. It's kind of ironic too because if you know McConnell's background, he had polio, and it almost rendered his family poor. The expenses that had to go into paying for it. So he's completely switched himself around. Um, Marco says in the 13th Amendment, Section 1, it says neither slavery or involuntary except as a punishment for crime. Why do you think that is? It says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude ex- I, except for punishment for crime. Okay, I think you wrote that in a way I'm getting a little confused. Do you mean, are you trying to say that it says neither slavery or involuntary servitude except as a punishment is a crime? Envoy says if you bring up women and minorities in the North, you're guaranteed to go far. Exactly. You still have a lot of people who will defend Obama, even though I will say that I don't think he did anything opposed to women's rights. I do think that he played the LGBT community for suckers, especially with his strategy for his reelection, where his campaign got mad at Biden for saying that he wasn't opposed to gay marriage before those conservative Catholics could go out and vote for him on the premise that he was against gay marriage. And only after getting your second term, now are you all of a sudden this unabashed supporter of gays? Yeah, get out of here. Oh yeah, Booker's another good example. Dirk, that man is a walking, talking, big wad of cash from Wall Street, and he's been able to trick people into thinking he's one of them too. I never get over him grandstanding against Sessions after the latter was nominated and then acting as if he was. It's kind of funny. There used to be, I think it was days into Trump being in office. They asked him if he was going to run for president in the next presidential election, and he said that he wasn't because he was going to be checking um, Trump's team or whatever. And literally within a year, it was that statement was just gotten rid of. Like, pretend it didn't happen. That was all erased. Let's see here. Okay, what else is being written? Did I miss something? All right, so I think everybody's mentioned. I will say I'm a little not disappointed, but I did want to speak more about McConnell because I do think he is significant. But I think all the points were made at the start of this. Booker tricked New York big time. He's tricking everybody except for those of us that have access to the internet and actually go to the right places where they tell us who's good and who's not. All you need to do is talk about social, and people vote for you, even though these social issues are superficial. Yeah, and then another thing is that if you look at the way that these politicians campaign, in a lot of cases, it literally is just, I'm going to latch on to this one topic. I'm going to keep speaking about that over and over, and then I'll just get in there. There was a speech that, and I remember this speech really good because the guy from Jimmy Kimmel came and messed with him over it, where Roy Moore was talking, and he said, I'm against Obamacare. I'd repeal it right now. And literally, he had all of these people applauding him, not realizing that one senator cannot repeal that law. Um, and that literally he's just trying to be Sessions 2.0 with that policy. We will continue to fall for the same okie dokie, like you said. Yeah, because people are too big into not looking this stuff up to go and find it out. Music Fiends has any thoughts on the DeSantis versus Gillum race? Gillum said when I heard his speech after getting the nomination, it sounded like Obama 2.0. I just hope that since he was endorsed by Bernie, he's not another establishment tool. We'll just have to wait and see. I will say that he seems to be better than DeSantis, but that's not saying much. DeSantis got on Fox talking about monkey something, and everybody got mad. Okay, Dirk says, I literally have no idea what McConnell does other than vote for whatever gets him richer. Yeah. Um, he's an empty suit. And it's sad because when he first came into office, he wasn't that way. I can show you a video of him from literally 30 years ago. It's his first term in the Senate where he's talking about the need for campaign finance reform. And they started throwing all that money at him during maybe the 90s or maybe the late 80s. Like, somewhere after his first term, it just all went downhill. Um, Envoy says, I know you've been critical of Obama, but in your opinion, what do you think he did right to progress and improve America? Um, I think Obamacare is a step in the right direction. I'd rather give you a right wing healthcare plan than nothing at all. Um, Trying to think of what else. Iran nuclear deal was good. Restoring relations with Cuba was good. Cutting the debt in half was good. Um, that's about it. Bernie is at the Tom Perez dinner parties now. I kind of can't trust Bernie like that. Well, Bernie is finding himself in a really awkward position because prior to this last election cycle, he was just the outsider senator that voted with the Democrats more often than not, the lesser of two evils. And as someone who has a serious chance of being able to mount an even more successful presidential campaign in 2 years, he's finding himself having to be within the positive view of the elite for the Democrats, and also at the same time not get so used to them that he thinks they're his allies. Yeah, I've seen it, Marco. It's awful. And again, I implore you, go watch the 717 billion. The first video I did about that. It's literally based around the idea of, you can't tell me, we have this enormous debt that Obama supposedly contributed to, and then your guy signs this, and your senators propose it. It just doesn't make any sense. But whatever. So, hope I answered Envoy's question. Dirk says Gillum might be Obama, but I have faith in Bernie's decision. Yeah, it could, I like to believe that he knows what he's doing. The other thing I might do with these streams is if I can find a way to mount the camera in front of, maybe like a computer, I could play some of these clips I'm talking about. But I don't like that thing where you're watching like something being played on a screen. I'd rather it be the embedded video within the video, but I'm not too tech savvy to handle that one yet. Let's see what else is here. But yeah, I hope that you've walked away from this more aware of McConnell, more aware of how him being in office is a continued failure of the Democratic Party, and why I've become convinced there's no hope for them. Because anytime you have a guy who is that unpopular, who can stay in a position of power, and you can't beat him, you know you have a problem. Okay, what are your thoughts on George Washington, how he influenced America? Other than the slavery thing, I don't really have a bad opinion of him at all. Dirk says it is proven that when you put money into universal health care and free public college, the debt lessens. Yeah, but good luck telling that to the Shapiro fans or Glenn Beck fans or whoever. I mean, I think I told you guys about the one conservative commentator who appears on Fox, and I just thought to myself, man, that's one dumb guy that ran for office one time and nobody took him seriously and he got smashed, and then he just went down like a pinata after it's been had all the candy beaten out of it. And then I find out he has his own show on YouTube, and it's getting tens of thousands of views every episode, and I'm just sitting there like, because I can't believe it. It's literally the most generic conservative commentator in the world who's just getting all these views. I'm like, what? At least with Candace Owens, I can see that most guys that like her just want to, get with some attractive woman. Because I can look at her and say that's someone who is not sophisticated on this topic at all. If you heard her response to why she doesn't believe in climate change, your mouth will be as agape as mine was when I heard it. I get told that I think I know everything, but one of the reasons I believe the scientific consensus is that I'm smart enough to know there are people who are more eons more well versed in this topic than I am, and so I take their word for it. I don't think there's some grand ball conspiracy where all these liberal scientists are trying to trick you. Yeah, music fiend. The second you heard, there's like one song called "I Hated You from Hello." That was you and her. Envoy says, kind of like Tommy, Lauren. Yeah, that's another one. Dirk says Candace needs to stop. Yeah, literally the only reason anybody likes her or Tommy is because the two of them are attractive, admittedly attractive looking women who do not follow the Hillary doctrine of you have to be this person who likes somebody just because of what their gender is. It's the same thing with the NRA spokeswoman. She's nothing special. It's just an attractive female playing this game that people wouldn't normally expect her to do, and so now it's just you know cool to them. It's all the same thing. Envoy says Hillary's just a pony. I could never get behind her. I could never get behind her because I found out during the election cycle how much of an empty suit she was. Music Fiend says Jimmy Dore is arguably the best commentator on YouTube. Yeah, he's great. You had one of my favorite things in contemporary time with him was the Alex Jones uh, taking down on social media. And you had the Young Turks, especially Anna, just sitting there going, "Yep, yep, yep, great thing, yep, 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 yep." And then Jimmy's saying, "Hey, if you just start banning free speech, um, what's to say the rest of us don't get yanked?" So it was nice. Somebody to get out of their comfort zone and take a position based off of principle rather than whatever is most comforting. Yeah. I remember that clip at the 2016 RNC. That was great. And then the guy following with the camera, insulting them or whatever. The man just spit in my face. It was amusing. And then the Bill Clinton rape T-shirt that he tried to pull out, and then Jank grabbed it and took it off camera. I know what you're talking about. And that was comedy gold. I don't like to necessarily be in these places with all of these different individuals that are politically leaning, because I know a lot of them kind of have this thing where we all have to have monolithic thought, and how dare you not agree with me. But that's one of those things I would have loved to have just seen in person, and it was nice seeing it on that live stream. It was funny, so it was very enjoyable. Um, What else is there to really be said? So I think we've explained the McConnell thing. Your Senate Majority Leader is an empty suit who takes money from everybody. Uh, I think that's about it. Oh, also the other funny thing is that um, I'm trying to figure out if I can, because there's a couple of issues Republicans screw up on over and over and over again. They've been doing it for years. One of them is climate change or environmental policies. The other one is gun control. So if I can find it, I would love like an entire list of just McConnell's responses to various gun control issues, like because he's been senator since Columbine happened, so all the ones after that, just what he had to say, if what he was going to propose. I guarantee it's just thoughts and prayers, and oh, such a horrible event. Don't politicize this. It's the same thing every time. Who do you think is the Crowder of the left? I have no idea. Kyle is really good, and that's about it. Only person I've seen who will go out of his way to find information that's not being talked about by even TYT. Uh, Music Fiend says Senate Minority Leader does the same thing. Pac-Man. I'm talking about Kalinsky. Um, oh no, yeah, Schumer's bad as well. I'm not, I told you that they're both bought out. Let's see what else is here. I also apologize for that light. That's yeah, Pac-Man's good too. I don't watch him as much as the others, so I'm not as used to him. I know that he went on Fox News, and then right after he went on there, he had all these conservatives, doing the usual name calling and all other nonsense. And it really goes back to what I was saying, in that whenever you go to a certain environment, even if it's only on TV, it really becomes more of a chore than rewarding, because you have these people who can't just. It's one thing to argue against the merit of what somebody said, but to call somebody a fool and oh my God, you're so stupid. How did you even get popular? It's unnecessary. Um, yeah, well, I really think Shapiro's overrated, but whatever. Like when I see him talk and you try to have a conversation with him, it just feels like you can't even speak, because he has so it's him and another person I'm personally familiar with that have a certain speaking style that I really do not like, and it's this thing that you only notice when it's them speaking with somebody else, where they will cut that person off and just keep their little thing going back and forth, and then by the time they're finished speaking, you barely can remember what you were trying to say. Like when Alexandria turned him down for that debate. No, I'm not saying he's bad, Envoy. I'm just saying that I if I'm fine with him whenever he's by himself. When it's just him talk, like if you go and watch the Shapiro show, and he's just talking about some news event, perfectly fine. But when you have him discussing something with another person, just completely cut off, and as he's giving his speech. So I hope that clarifies the Envoy. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's boring to watch. It's just that speaking style when it's in the company of somebody else is aggravating. Like one of the things I liked about Ruben is that when you go on his show, even if what you're saying is wrong, you can at least be allowed to talk. It's not none of the combative nonsense. Yeah, I remember that one, Marco. And look, the saddest thing is that what people were talking about, how Jank was talking or whatever, how he got beat. I really was thinking to myself, I don't know what else he could have done, because I've watched clips of Shapiro with other people, and it's that every single time, unless he's being interviewed. So if it's like I'm gonna invite you on my show, it's just him talking. Ugh. He is talking to a lot of college kids who don't know anything. Yeah, well, the people he's around also, like I can give, me and Shapiro both agree on Obama being horrible. Um, but I think I know we disagree on the Southern strategy. Um, so there's ways in which we agree and we don't agree. Whatever. I'm all the way down here. He's all the way up there. Um, Doubles down for part unity. Still does a great job. His platform makes him more safe. Mm-hmm. See what else is here. Shapiro speaks exactly like your mom. I can imagine how that must feel. Um, so I want to maybe tomorrow or next week do the stream on this Twitter stuff. It's been chaotic, crazy, and just outright insane when you read some of the responses I've had, and I want to actually show it because I want to give you an idea of the work that's gone on even when I'm not streaming. So we might get it. So thank you. And I appreciate those who are here. Like I said, if we could get this kind of dialogue in the relationship stuff, people would not be calling each other all these ridiculous names and terms and thinking somebody's going to do a terrorist act because they happen to, say whatever. But, the world's not perfect, even if these streams are. So thank you and have a good day.